whole time. We're going to start this over again. Hello, this is the May 2015 edition of Ask AS21 on the 21st. It is the 21st of May 2015, Thursday night at just past 9 p.m. or 2100 hours military time. So I'm here to answer any of your questions. I am Keith F. Shovlin, publisher and chief creative of AS21 Publishing. Now, this webcast is meant to help those that are primarily doing self-publishing, but also I can answer any questions for anyone else that has interests that are book-related, whether it be the writing process or editing, cover design, but also just straight-up questions on publishing and marketing and promotions of your book. This is a monthly webcast we do on the 21st of every month, and just here to try to help out people looking for answers. We have several ways you can reach out to us, not only here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ace21pub, but with this live broadcast, you can chat with us and send in your questions. Then, of course, we're on Twitter. We're on Twitter at AS21. You could tweet to us with the hashtag AskAS21, and that's one place that you can get back to us. We have, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/AS21, and we actually had an open feed there for people to ask questions, and we put a couple up just to, try to get started and asking about what time of the webcast, of course, 2100 hours, 9 o'clock Eastern time. And also asking for the various ways to get questions to us. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Google+. We're on Instagram, as21.events on Instagram. We usually share pictures of our company events, going to book fairs, book signings, launches, things of that nature. Then we're also on several other sites. If you want to talk to us through Skype, we're on Skype as at AS21. Or you can also call and text us at 571-206-8021. The number again is 571-206-8021. Now I just need to get that flashing on the screen here, but we'll work on that. So like I was starting to say before I realized my mic wasn't turned on. Oh, I see we have a viewer. Fantastic. Welcome. We just had the Gaithersburg Book Festival in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And that was an extremely enjoyable experience, getting out to meet with readers and be out there with some of our authors, promoting their works. It was a long festival. Typically, the festivals go for like 6 or 7 hours. This one went from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So just open time was 8 hours. But we had to be set up at 8 o'clock. So 2 hours before, going to set up 2 hours before it would started. Now, then, of course, a rainstorm came through the area on Saturday. So it actually cut about an hour off the end of the thing. But still, it was a enjoyable time nonetheless. We were very happy to meet with all the people that we could out there, and it was fun, and we're looking forward to doing it again next year. This is the third book fair we've gone to so far this year. First one was the Virginia Festival of the Book in Charlottesville back on the 21st of March. Then last month in April, we had the Kensington International Day of the Book Festival in Kensington, Maryland. Next month in June, we're going to the Columbia Festival of Arts in Columbia, Maryland, where one of our authors, Dr. Deepan Chatterjee, has been invited. He's a local resident of Columbia, and he'll be out talking about his book, a collection of poetry and short fiction called The First Prophetical. So he'll be there talking about his book and signing copies, and we'll try to be there to support him. Then we're going to be off for a couple months, and next up after that is the Fall for the Book Festival in Fairfax, Virginia, on the campus of George Mason University. We will be They haven't opened that up for participants to sign up yet, but we're going to do our best to get in there and get a table. So we'll be there to not only support our authors and sell their books and have them be there to meet with people directly, but also to promote AS21 and many of the fine services we have. And we are a e-publishing company, but we also offer some of our services a la carte for those who wish to self-publish, such as access to our editing team, our design team, and then of course our work doing digitalization and digital format conversion. Now, those are things, if you look back on our YouTube channel, you see various things that you'll hear me talk about the various things that are helpful for those in the book industry. And I've talked about getting your ISBN. I've talked about trying to find different events in places like not just bookstores, but libraries and college campuses. I've talked about book festivals, especially right after the one in Charlottesville. So pretty much I've covered a lot of the basics of book marketing and promotion. So I think tonight we should probably talk a little bit about writing your book. There are a lot of people out there that are still in the writing phase. And it's to be understood, there's a lot that goes into that part. And I know my first book, Polk Soliloquy, it took me about 5 years to write in total. My second book, which is much shorter, Life's Penance, it was a novella. I started at one point, but only put maybe a chapter down and then picked it up again about a year and a half later and wrote the rest of the book in a 3-4 month period. So it's all, in those cases, it was finding the time when I could do the writing and really getting energized by the subject matter, to just that the story was so fresh and percolating in my mind that it could flow through my fingers into the keyboard and onto my Word documents. And of course, that's the way I prefer to work. I prefer to type with a Word document. Sometimes I'll record if I'm thinking about things and I have access with a computer, or I don't feel like typing on the keyboard on my phone. I'll record voice memos. Pretty much when you're in that mindset where you're trying to do writing, you're going to have ideas constantly, and with those ideas, you want to get them somewhere. If you get them down on paper, that's great. If you can get them typed out, that's great. But also use voice memos, use anything you can to try to get down those ideas, because you may think you're going to remember it, but you're not. I mean, you're going to think you have the perfect plan of how to do. I mean, if you finally have that epiphany, you finally have that breakthrough. How is this person going to get from chapter 3 to chapter 4? You finally figure out how, but you don't write it down. And then you get home and, okay, all right, how did he do it? Or she did it? Ah! Write it down. Record it. Tell somebody else if you trust them. If you trust them. And then whatever you do, try to get a record of it so that you can look at it later and go, aha, I remember that. I know when both writing both my first 2 books, I did a lot of pretty much, I've got dozens of different types of pieces of paper and Word documents and text documents and notes on my email and everything. Basically anywhere I could be, like notes on my phone, notes on my email, wherever I had an idea, just write it down, get it down, and then save it until I could sit down and do the writing. And usually, if I'm organized about it, I have those notes when I go to write. If I'm not organized about it, then I'm in trouble. In fact, there was a couple bits in Polk when I was writing Polk Soliloquy where I lost track of a whole page of notes, and then trying to recollect in my mind those thoughts, and so that I had time to actually write, and I couldn't do it. And I don't think I ever found those notes. So, which is probably for the best, because if you do find those notes, then all of a sudden you realize you did it wrong and you have to go back and rewrite, or who knows, maybe you thought up something better in the meantime. That happens as well. But Now, everyone has their own writing process. If you actually are a regular subscriber or viewer of the aois21 channel, you see that we have our monthly creative speaking video series where it features several of our creatives talking about their books and their writing process as well as influences. But they talk about the key things they need to feel creative to write. I'm like to be very organized in my writing process. When I'm working, I try to keep to one story at a time. I don't want to be bouncing back and forth because I might mix up things, uh, which could be a bad thing. I mean, I have the various novellas I have planned out of my Millennial Rose series, but I'm really focused on writing the second book, and I'm have ideas about the seventh and the fourth, and and I try to at least write them down. But for then, when I come back to try to focus on the second book, it's just not there. And that could be because the second book, Andy for President, is about a mock presidential campaign in 2008. And living here in Washington, D.C., maybe I've just had enough of politics that I don't feel like writing about a political campaign right now. And uh, perhaps, but that book will still be done someday. And then once that one's out of the way, then I should be able to clear through some of the backlog on books 3, 4, and up. But I write. One of the first things I write is I start with uh, I'll have my story in mind, so I'll write my outline and break down the key points, arcs, resolutions, denouement, the ups and downs of a story. In the case of Polk Soliloquy, it was 16 chapters, and I tried to have a different arc through every 4 chapters with the overarching arc of the main character through the whole story. Life's Penance, there's only 9 chapters, well, technically 8 chapters, but ninth chapter is visual. Uh, they they also, like, there's an arc of the first 3 chapters and an arc of the second 3 chapters, and then the final 2 constitute an arc that doesn't really have a close. It doesn't really have a resolution. It kind of leaves it up in the air because such is life, things are ongoing. Uh, but so I plan out the outline, and of course, during that process, I may have an idea for, in this chapter, I want to, or at this point in the story, not necessarily chapter, I want a scene where this happens. I actually wrote out a whole scene that was in chapter 4 of Polk Soliloquy before I had written anything. There was just one scene in chapter 4 that I had already written in my mind, and I just needed to get down on paper. And as soon as I could, I got that written. Now, let me just take a break here for a second. We're talking about my writing to see if there's any questions from you. Now, this is a 30-minute webcast, so let's see. Nothing, no responses to our Twitter. Under the hashtag AskAce21. On Twitter, no tweets. On our Facebook page, nothing on our running commentary there. Okay. Let's see. Let's see other social things. Google Plus. I'm not much into using Google Plus for the app, but I'm on there now, and nothing in. Okay. All right. So let's see. Time is now 9:22. So we're going to just do about 8 minutes more, and then that'll be it for tonight. Let me just Let's see. Okay, well, so the writing process, chances are good it's going to take you longer to write than you thought. When I started writing Polk Soliloquy, I had just graduated college. I hadn't yet found a job, but I had this idea for this epic book. It's great American novel, historical fiction. Major historical characters had already done a fair share of research, but not enough to really start writing it. I was really more at the point starting to collect books to get more, because when you're writing historical fiction and you're using real historical characters, you're a bit more beholden to the events and actually knowing the individuals before writing. But so I was just so eager to write that I started writing Polk Soliloquy. And so then that was 2004, so summer 2004. And then for the next 5 years, off and on, I would pick up the book when I'd have ideas or when I'd be going through a patch where I was feeling particularly inspired. I'd go back and reread what I wrote before and then try to write some more. And then finally, in late 2009, I finished writing the book. I had a couple friends who were editors that I was able to send the book to during the process for them to, help me do story development, but also to catch my mistakes as I went. Not that the final book was perfect. Nobody can catch every mistake, but we finally did. I shot once I had it written and most of the editing done. I was shopping it around. First, I was looking into the traditional publishing market, and then I was trying to track down literary agents. I found a couple literary agents I wanted to work with. Neither of them were taking on new clients at the time. So then I, started learning about self-publishing and looked into a couple different self-publishing sites. I'm not sure if CreateSpace was up and running then, but I know I didn't look at it at all. My focus was on two different sites. There was Ladarius Creative Solutions and Lulu.com. And as I compared pricing and everything and success stories, I heard there was a CNN article about a writer that's self-published on Lulu who sold 20,000 copies and then was signed to a contract just with Simon and Schuster. So it's like, okay, that's all right. Lulu.com, the way it goes. Of course, being completely naive about what Lulu would do for me. Yes, they printed my book, and still to this day they are the print. They hold the print rights for Polk Soliloquy, print on demand, and they got me on Amazon and the iBookstore and Barnes and Noble and everything. But beyond distribution, that's where Lulu.com leaves you, and that's all that. Really, when you think about, that's all that you can expect. I paid them money for the package for publishing the book, and once the book is published, my deal with them, that's it. They cover distribution, but they're not going to help me book events. They did offer me some extremely overpriced business cards and other things. I think it was like almost $200 for a set of 500 business cards, where it would just be your book and the web address for your Lulu store. Whereas at the time, I could get 250 business cards from Vistaprint for free. So that totally was not a worth it promotional avenue. But so now I started aois21 once I really got rolling. Then I got my master's in business administration from GW, focusing on marketing of services, and it taught me more about advertising and promotions, and and at the time the very basics of using social media for marketing. And then since then, I've continued my studies, learning about using social media, doing webcasts, doing podcasts, doing blogging, and pretty much anything I can to promote my work. And then that led in the end of 2013 into 2014, the launch of aois21 Publishing. So I know this was a talk about the writing process, but just kind of dovetailed into the larger discussion of why I'm here tonight as publisher and chief creative of aois21. Now, let's see, it's now 9:27, so final 3 minutes. Do one more check of Twitter. And final check of Facebook. Come on. Okay. All right, so no questions. Well, as with each of these webcasts, though, even though there might not be any questions asked, I do try to impart useful information. And once I'm done, these videos are saved to the aois21 YouTube channel. So these are there, and they're going to stay up there as long as YouTube lets us. And you'll be able to listen to me, or in the case of this episode, watch me talk without sound for the first 10 minutes. And but be able to hopefully gain some insight and some help. Uh, yeah, like I keep saying, if you want to know anything specific, ask me a question. I'll do my best to answer it to the best of my ability. So, all right, 9:29. So just quick closing out for this month's webcast. Thank you for any of you who are watching it. I know I see there is one viewer watching live. Uh, for anyone that's watching this in the future, thank you for your time. Coming up in this coming Monday, May 25th, which is Memorial Day, we will be releasing the next episode of our poetry podcast, Passion on the Page. And it's actually the first of our what we call our creative inspiration episodes. It's a regularly rotation between our four poets with that, and a fifth. Every fifth episode is a guest poet. The following episode is creative inspiration. Pardon me. The idea behind creative inspiration being that, I have dabbled in poetry, but I'm not a poet. But poetry inspires me. And many of our other creatives are not poets, but poetry has inspired them. So this gives all of our aois21 creatives a chance to contribute to the poetry podcast. So in this case, it's poems that inspire them, and it could be from anybody. It could be famous poets like Robert Frost or Shakespeare or anyone. Or it could be, locally known poets. You could be promoting a friend's work, or you could be promoting, if you're inspired by your own work, that's also out there. Or, a poem isn't necessarily just a poem. There's a lot of songs where lyrics are pretty much poetry set to music. So those could be inspiring as well. So this is the first episode of the Creative Inspiration podcast, and it'll be every 6 episodes will be that. That's after the rotation are 4 poets, the guest poet, and then creative inspiration. And I'm actually the person reading this episode, and it's a poem that inspired me. Not only it's beautiful poetry that I enjoy, but also helped inspire the podcast and the name of the podcast. And it's a Song of the Wandering Aengus by William Butler Yeats. And I hope to have read it clearly and coherently to honor the greatness that is William Butler Yeats. Now, that podcast comes out every 21 days. Coming out on the 7th of June will be the next episode of the Publish Me podcast, where I host with author Paul Dickinson Russell, where he's talking through, as he's going through the process of writing and then publishing his book, The Will of the Magi. So we have that comes out every month on the 7th of each month, and usually it's about 30 minutes long. Last month we talked about it's a fantasy novel, so we talked about the rules of the magic in his world. This upcoming one will be talking about the setting, more of the physical space that his characters live in. So look out for that on with that podcast, Publish Me. We have a facebook.com/publish podcast. We're on Twitter at Publish Podcast. And it's ace21.podomatic.com is the site where it's hosted. And of course, it's on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. As with Passion on the Page, it's ace21.soundcloud.com, and it's also on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. So just to finish up, thank you for watching. If you have any questions anytime, you can email me at pub at ace21.com. You can call at 571-206-8021. We're on facebook.com/ace21, at ace21 on Twitter, ace21.tumblr.com, LinkedIn, we have a company page there, ace21 Publishing. On Instagram, ace21.events, where we're sharing pictures from events. Pinterest, About Me, Google+, every social media site you could think of, we are on in some way, shape, or form. Skype at ace21, all of it. So there are dozens of ways for you to get in contact with us. So if you have a question, let us know. All right. Have a good night, and I'll see you next month.